All across America and around the world, this is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us, whether it's on your mobile phone or your computer or your laptop, your tablet. But listen in to Veterans Radio Podcasts. We post something new every week, and you're going to find it informative. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today Army veteran Jim Evans. We've got him on because he's a very successful business guy. Jim, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thank you, Jim. I'm very proud and happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, you know, it's always great to talk to a veteran who's succeeded in business, because all too often we get portrayed as folks who don't go down that career path. But let's start at the beginning. How did a nice kid like you end up at West Point?
Well, thanks for asking. I grew up in this little town in Grundy Center, Iowa, and I had so many fabulous influences in my life. My dad was a World War II veteran who served in the Army Corps of Engineers. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge way back in, when he was 20 years old. And so I knew a little bit about the military from my dad, and he suggested to me that I ought to consider applying. And then we had a recruiter who came and spoke to us and showed us all of the action activities that you get when you go to a military academy, whether it's field work like we had in the Boy Scouts or, a lot of athletic stuff. And I just kind of gravitated to that. It looked challenging and inviting, and that's what got me there.
Well, you graduated in 1983, brand new shiny lieutenant. You ultimately served about 10 years on active and guard reserve duty, came out as a major. But tell us a little bit about your military career.
Yeah, so I like to think about my time at West Point too. I had terrific influences there that got me started and inspired me to do some of the stuff that I did on active duty. I enjoyed some of my professors that had been through Ranger program and airborne activities. And so I looked at all that stuff and thought, that would be kind of fun to pursue that. So I managed to get a slot in the 82nd Airborne Division in the Field Artillery. And while we were there, we saw a lot of things going on. But I grew up in the Field Artillery there in the 82nd. We saw Green Berets running around on post. And so some of us put our heads together and said, wouldn't it be fun to do what those guys do? and ended up going through the Special Forces program there. And subsequently, Jim, I went into 10th Special Forces Group, and I jumped a lot. I like to sport parachutes, so I ended up commanding a Halo detachment for a couple of years on active duty in 10th Group. Up back in those days, it was at Fort Devens. Now it's at Fort Carson. So that's my active duty career, and I met some fabulous people along the way.
Well, it's one of those foundational experiences as a young man that you got both a great education, but leadership opportunities and interacting with a whole diverse range of people. So, was it everything you thought you were going to get into when you were in high school listening to the recruiter?
I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. From day one, it was all new, and you go through life that way. It's a journey, and you're just trying to figure out, what's to do next. I learned how to work well, I think, with people, and I learned that listening to people that are older and more experienced, my NCOs, for instance, were always smarter than us lieutenants. They just always knew what was going on. And so I feel like, the quicker we figured that out, the better off we were.
Yeah, that is one of the things you have to learn as a young person is that you don't have all the answers, and maybe that older guy over there with more experience can give you some good insight, and that carries through for life, right? That's one of those things. Like, I'm glad I learned that because it still applies today. There's somebody who's got more knowledge and experience. Well, there comes a point in time, and I think this is true for most folks in the service. They've got to make that decision: do I get out and get into the civilian world? And that was a decision that you made. Talk to us about, as you approach that transition, again, did you know what you were going to do, or is this, again, leaping and hoping it works?
Yeah, that's I knew that I was interested in finance and markets, and I knew that, Jim, that I wanted to lead. And I had entrepreneurial blood in my veins. I just didn't know quite how to get there from here. And so I thought, while I was still on active duty, maybe a reasonable transition would be to go to graduate school and study about business and kind of build on the foundation that I had and study more about financial markets. So I did. I used that as a transition. Interestingly, there were a whole bunch of military people with me in my graduate school program, and the Duke Blue Devils. I went to the program. You can see it on my wall in the background. But Coach Krzyzewski was the coach, and he's a West Pointer. And so,
Right.
we had CEOs coming in and talking to us about how they ran their businesses. I always found it fun. Each year, Coach K would come in and talk about the basketball team like a business, and it was just fabulous. So I applied to go to graduate school, and then got extended one more year in my command slot on a Halo team, and fortunately stayed for another year, and then went to school and found a reserve unit close by, and so did the business school thing and stayed in the reserves and actively involved with that. But it wasn't sure how to get there from here, and yes.
One of the things I think people don't realize is how supportive the military is of education. I don't care if you're a 19-year-old enlisted kid or a 21-year-old officer. The military wants you to get more educated, doesn't it?
They do. They do. They'll send you to school, and it's really, as we say to each other, you're your own best career manager. The opportunities are out there for us. We just have to go find them, and then we know, like you said, that there's a supportive network of people that will encourage us and military members and service members to go and do that sort of thing. It's
Well,
always.
that's a real pearl of wisdom there for veteran radio listeners that Jim Evans is giving you, and that is you have to be your own best career manager wherever you are in life. But you get out of graduate school and move on to the business world. I don't think many of us know what the heck finance really means. So talk to us about that aspect of your career.
Yeah, I was recruited to join a big national bank in Chicago, the First National Bank of Chicago, which now is part of JP Morgan Chase. And in my situation, I was recruited to go onto the capital market, into the capital markets, what they called associates program. And it was another learning experience. They rotated us around to different parts of the trading floor so that we could learn more about what was going on. And then ultimately, sort of, people would interview us and we would understand what they did. And hopefully at the end of it, there would be a match. And in my case, I liked the futures markets, futures and options. Think Chicago Board of Trade, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Back in those days, they were all open outcry markets. And I thought, boy, that's action, like like jumping out of planes. This is pretty cool. And so I pursued that avenue and subsequently got wrapped up into the First Chicago Futures organization and worked with people on trading floors and with clients that were trading commodities and futures contracts. So that was how I got into that. And then I got recruited off the trading floor to do some structured finance, and that's another story.
Well, one of the things I think a lot of veterans struggle with, or maybe their friends struggle with it more, is seeing veterans move from job to job to job. And in talking to veteran business owners for 20 years now, that's not an unusual. That's all part of just like rotating through different positions in the military. You're gaining experiences along the way. So while you started in the capital markets, you kind of knew that wasn't going to be where you ended up.
Yes, well, that's true, and I, like everybody else, I have a unique path that I think is different, but it's funny. You don't really know where you're going to end up, and just by being out there in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt talks about, just get out there. And as you're going, you're going to meet some people that will give you ideas about where you can go next. And some of it, to me, I just think of as blessings. They seem like coincidences, but I don't think they really are. I think we're on sort of a path, and we meet people along the way, and then we figure out where we need to go from there. And that's my life's been all about that.
And I think that's one of those, another pearl of wisdom is like, don't get discouraged that it's not a straight line connecting dot A to B to C. The fun part are all the zigzags. You still want to come out at point D, but you don't have to get there in a straight line, do you?
No, not at all. The opportunity that you end up pursuing is probably the one that you might never have even thought about it. And it might come from somebody you never thought would have provided you that opportunity. So that I know that that's the case with me.
With all that finance background and a military background, you found yourself in an opportunity to join up with a company called Lend-Lease that was involved in military housing. Again, not the place probably you ever thought you'd be back to, but tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I was on the trading floor doing the brokerage thing, and a fella that I didn't know came downstairs to structure a big hedge transaction. Little did I know that he had a photographic memory. He knew more about military nomenclature than I. He grew up. He was from Cuba, and a lawyer and formerly an accountant. And he said, hey, I'm going to pursue this military housing privatization business with my team upstairs. You could help me analyze some of the various risks associated with military housing privatization. And so before you know it, I was on his team looking at that sort of stuff. And the bank then eventually figured out that they could probably do other things that were more profitable than financing the military housing stuff. But I caught the bug, and I thought, I think we could go and improve on the military housing relative to where it was when I was in the mid 1980s. My wife and I lived in military housing, and I just thought, man, there's a lot of improvements that could be made. And so we built a company and went after and pursued and privatized a lot of the military family housing. That's what led me to Lend-Lease.
Well, and again, one of those zigzags but a great, interesting interlude in the career, right? Something that came out of the blue and said, this is interesting. I can have some fun at this. But that's not where you ended up. You stayed there for a while and then moved on to, and we want to talk about Sevan MultiSitate Solutions, which you started, I think, in about 2011.
Yes.
What is Sevan MultiSitate Solutions, and again, yes. why did a guy who jumped out of helos think that he could do this?
Yeah, Well, I ran a similar business later on in my time at Lend Lease. We were project managing construction for BP, the oil company, on their retail sites in the U.S., Mexico, and sort of 13 countries in Europe. So I kind of knew a little bit about that business. And I resigned from Lend Lease after being there for I think 8, 9 years. So I'll credit my wife with the start of Sevan MultiSitate Solutions. I was thinking that we would move back to Iowa, where I grew up, and bring our 5 kids along with us. And my wife said to me, "No, that's stupid. The kids are all well situated here in Illinois. We don't want to move back to your hometown of 2,500 people." And so I thought, well, geez, I better call some of my friends and see if they want to start a business with me. And this was back in 2000, 2010. It wasn't a great time to start a business, but we met in the basement and said, okay, before we start a business, we got to agree on values. What are the core values that we think are important? And so we said we can't really start a business unless we all agree on that, and spent a lot of time talking about integrity, respect, teamwork, excellence, and charity. Those are our 5 core values. They all build on each other too when you think about it. Integrity first, then respect, then teamwork and excellence. And charity is kind of the cherry on top, because we were all kind of midlife and we wanted to give back. And then after that, we said, well, what could we do? What could we be the best in the world at? What drives our economic engine? This is sort of Jim Collins' business management playbook, and so we thought about that for a while. We said, we know how to run a multi-site program management business, and for those that don't know what that is, think about McDonald's or Walmart or Starbucks or IKEA. Anybody that has hundreds or thousands of sites, they all have challenging situations remodeling sites or building new sites. And so we knew the network of people that could help do that. So we said, all right, let's create a multi-site program management business. And that's what we did.
And everybody listening who's been in the military heard your core values and said, well, my service, and I don't care which service it is, they all have core values. That was something you were pulling forward from your military experience. And I think that's what a lot of veteran business owners do, is they pull it forward from things that they learned and are sort of foundational to them, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. And you look at those core values and you compare them against other businesses and you go, gosh, there's a lot of commonality there. And then it really once you get going in business, we tell our team, even when we hire new people, if you run into a problem and you don't know what to do and there's nobody available to talk to and call about it, fall back on those core values. And if you're doing the right thing for your clients and you're doing the right thing for your teamwork, and your integrity, respect, teamwork, excellence, oh my gosh, you can't really go wrong with that. Doing the right things for the right reasons.
And I think that's just one of those traits that a lot of veterans have in their DNA. They just kind of have to bring it out a little bit. And in your experience, have you found that veterans make good employees, good business owners, good JV partners? What has driven you in that aspect?
Absolutely. It's fabulous. A lot of people don't understand us. They just don't understand veterans. And so if you can find an organization that has veterans in there already as part of their DNA and leadership that are veterans, oh gosh, I know in my business, we know and appreciate that, and we actively recruit people from the military. About 10% of our 400-person team has been in the military. we probably have more Army people than other services, so we don't discriminate. But we have Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, even have a Coast Guard person on the team.
You're still looking for your first Space Force hire. I understand.
We are. That's exactly right. One of these days we'll get a Space Force person on board. But no, and we talk about that even in our marketing material. Just the discipline of programmatic management of activities. We do it in the military all the time, and so it's kind of natural. We have a gentleman that is the president of our construction and government services group, who was on active duty for 25 years, led units, all over the place, building things around the world. And he's recruited, a lot of military veterans just in construction specifically. There's a lot of safety is so important. Military understands safety. We're around that every day. But yes, I'm very happy to be surrounded by military veterans, and they're some of the very best leaders you could ever find.
I've got a few more questions I want to get to, but I don't want to lose track of this note I made. This idea of project management on construction kind of brings you full circle back to your dad being in the Army Corps and what he was doing during his service. Sort of an interesting full circle, isn't it?
It is, yes. And
one of the other things I want to get to is that, and this is how I got tuned into Sevan MultiSitate Solutions and you, Jim Evans, is through the National Veteran Business Development Council, NVBDC.org, as we often say. And I don't know if it was a write-up there or an award there or something in their Military and Veteran Task Force organization newsletter. But tell us about being a certified, and why, a certified veteran-owned business.
Yes. Well, Jim, we started out as a veteran-owned small business, and that certification came through the Small Business Administration. And eventually we grew and we outgrew that small business status. And lo and behold, probably 6 years ago, 3 of our big clients, McDonald's, Walgreens, and BP, called us and said, "Are you guys still a veteran-owned business?" And I said, "Well, depends what you mean by that. And we're not small anymore. And no, we don't have that certification because we outgrew it." And they said, as a larger business, you can get certified by NVBDC. And it's a very similar process. And you'll be able to network with veterans and big corporations that are looking for people that can deliver the kind of services we do. And so with a little bit of arm twisting from my clients, I thought, oh, well, let's do this. And with a little luck, I can help some other people that are starting businesses. And so we did that. And it was a fairly, it's a rigorous process, but a good one to go through. And boy, the network is strong with NVBDC. I really have enjoyed the relationships there, and it's solid.
Yeah, it is rigorous, but that's what you want. That's what corporate America wants, to avoid any shams or frauds or other things that can happen. And so, it's rigorous, but that's maybe a good thing. Yes. And as you say, they've got a lot of networking opportunities that are helpful. But one more thing I want to get to before we run out of time. Well, 2 more things. I think, talk about the charitable aspect of what the corporation does as a core value. And I know you have the Sevan Charitable Foundation, which is a 501c3, started in 2017. But talk about that, because that's a unique aspect for a business. And again, that maybe rings a little bit with that military upbringing and understanding that you got to help others in the unit.
Yeah, giving back and paying it forward are 2 things that I know so many of us find important. And so when we picked charity as our fifth value, we meant it. And we said, when we get to a certain point, we're going to give a percentage of our earnings every year into the charity. And so we created, the Seven Charitable Foundation probably, 7-8 years ago. But even before that, we were volunteering for things, and it just brings the team together around common goals. We early on connected with the Fisher House Foundation.
Absolutely.
And we've done a bunch of work on Fisher House projects, and they'd sponsor the Army 10-mile race in Washington, D.C. So we'd go and run. We'd bring a team of runners out there. Ronald McDonald House was important to us. And curiously, Ronald McDonald House for children is often situated close to Fisher House. Love the USO. I serve on the advisory board for the USO, and what a fabulous organization! Really, really good. And then in certain states, you can find state organizations. In Illinois, the Illinois Joining Forces Group is an umbrella organization, and I'm fortunate to sit on the board of directors for that group too. And they got a call center, and then they network together with all the other military charities that support both veterans and active duty service members and their families through this Illinois Joining Forces Group. And I suspect there's some like that throughout the rest of the country. But those are some we really care about, and we have a charity golf tournament every year, and we raise money for charity.
Well, I think it's so important. It's so important to give back. And again, when you're in the military, you're serving the country. You're giving back, if you will, by that service. And yet, here's a business that's even 20 years later or something is still giving back and paying it forward. That's wonderful. We're talking to Jim Evans with Sevan MultiSitate Solutions, Army veteran, successful business owner, and I often get asked, what would you say if a kid came to you today, and a niece, a nephew, a friend's child, about going into military service? And you have a unique aspect about that. You mentioned that you and your wife have 5 children, but let's talk about those who are serving.
Yeah, I highly encourage it. I think the military is a great way to start out life. And my oldest son is a West Pointer and commissioned into the cyber branch out of West Point, and then served on active duty for about 7 years, and is still serving in a different capacity, although it's not on active duty. Another one of my sons is in the 101st Airborne Division right now, Air Assault, and is getting ready to go to the 173rd over in Italy or Germany pretty soon. He and his wife, Texas A&M grads, and he loves it. He's 4 years into it and just having a blast working with soldiers and NCOs, and I highly encourage it. And what a great way to start your career.
Well, it's foundational. It absolutely is. Jim Evans, thanks for taking time today to talk to Veterans Radio, to talk about your course through the military and the business world, and giving us some pearls of wisdom that people can apply. We really appreciate your time today, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows
by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. We also want to thank our local sponsors, This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.